At least 26 people have been killed after a gunman opened fire on tourists in Indian-administered Kashmir. Many more people near the resort town of Pahalgam have been taken to hospital with gunshot wounds. Imran Ullah Khan reports.
Please ask for help.
The town of Pahalgam in Indian-administered Kashmir is known for its picturesque mountain paths and wildlife. But on Tuesday, its nature trails turned into a scene of a bloody attack. Police say several gunmen opened fire on locals and tourists alike. The area where the attack happened is remote, with tourists only able to access it by foot or on horseback.
We have been stopped for the past 2 hours. We don't know what has happened. The authorities have no answers. We've been traveling since morning from Jammu, and our hotel is just 7 kilometers away.
Police say this is the work of separatist fighters and have called it the largest targeted attack on civilians in the area in recent years. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi denounced the attack, saying, "Those behind these heinous acts will be brought to justice, and that they will not be spared." Earlier this month, there was a gun battle between security forces and suspected separatist fighters in the region that killed 6 people, including 4 officers. But local authorities say Tuesday's attack is a rare occurrence, and that tourists should not feel unsafe.
We are asking tourists who are coming to Jammu and Kashmir not to panic. There is peace in the region and the government is also with us. The incident will be thoroughly investigated and we need to stay strong and united.
Pahalgam attracts thousands of tourists during its spring and summer months as a top sightseeing destination and an escape from hectic city life. But this attack on the small remote town has left its streets congested with the sounds of police patrol cars and sirens, and tourists and locals looking for answers. Imran Ullah Khan, Al Jazeera.
There have been protests following Tuesday's attack. Candlelight vigils and rallies have taken place in a number of cities. Some are calling on the Home Affairs Minister to step down. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has cut short his visit to Saudi Arabia. Well, C. Uday Bhaskar is a security analyst and retired Commodore. He is also the director of the Society for Policy Studies. That's an independent think tank based in New Delhi. And I'm glad to say that he joins us now from Singapore. Uday, do we know exactly who is behind this attack? The Resistance Front, the TRF, a Pakistan-backed terrorist group, has claimed responsibility. But how seriously is that being taken?
Pakistan-based terror groups have claimed responsibility, but at this point in time, the investigation is going on, and I think the Indian agencies will collect whatever they can and arrive at a determination. But the larger point is that terror groups operating from across the border have often looked for an opportunity and have carried out an attack of this nature. And this is a replay of what happened almost 25 years ago when then US President Mr. Bill Clinton had visited India. And now we have the US Vice President Mr. Vance in India. And you can see that there is a very familiar pattern at play.
OK, you mentioned there, Uday, the background and trouble that's been happening before. Historically, there has been trouble in this area, but it's rare for tourists and civilians to be targeted. Why do you think that's happened now?
This is a very clear sense of a premeditated attack to perhaps achieve 2 objectives, as I can see it. One is to use the visit of a US dignitary, in this case, the Vice President, to draw attention to Kashmir, quote unquote. And the second also is to try and provoke an escalation of the military tension between India and Pakistan. And from all accounts, the very fact that this is the top story on your channel, as in other media channels globally, is indicative of the fact that perhaps the first box has been ticked. Global attention has been drawn to Kashmir, and the fact that India and Pakistan have been grappling over this issue since October of 1947. The second box is how will India respond? And as of now, that is a question mark because, as you pointed out in your report, in a very rare development, Prime Minister Modi cut short his official visit to Saudi Arabia and returned to India, where I gather there is a meeting of the Cabinet Committee on Security and some determination would be arrived at.
And what's the reaction been then to this? Because in terms of security, there's some criticism that there's been a lapse there. I mean, there are around 300,000 troops and police in Kashmir, but it didn't seem as if that security was there in this area, which was a tourist resort.
You know, this is one of the challenges for almost every major democracy. How do you ensure the equivalent of foolproof security for your citizens against a very determined adversary who takes recourse to this kind of premeditated, and if I may use the word, dastardly terrorism, where you target civilians, in this case, tourists who are in that part of Kashmir. But for any state, and India in particular, this is going to be a challenge. And was it a lapse? The short answer is yes.
Uday, what is the background here then? You mentioned Pakistan and India, but for the viewers who aren't aware, you know, what has been the trouble? Clearly there's been generations of trouble here.
The brief background is that after the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan and the withdrawal and the implosion of the former Soviet Union, we are looking at the late 1980s and the early 1990s, there was a blowback in terms of the terrorist fervor, where there was a very famous picture of the militant, at that time the Taliban, holding a Kalashnikov in one hand and the Quran in the other and carrying out this holy war. This kind of fervor was directed by the Pakistani military, the agencies there, against India in the early 1990s. And a number of terror groups across the border, some within Jammu and Kashmir, at that time the state was composite, had used the terror weapon against India in a very indiscriminate way. And then slowly they evolved a pattern, as I said, where they would use the visit of major dignitaries to draw attention. We saw the Bill Clinton episode. Now we can see what has happened with Mr. J.D. Vance there. And Pakistan's reliance on terror as a weapon of war against India is something that has been reasonably well documented. And I think that is what is being played out here, because just about 10 days ago, the Pakistani army chief gave a very vitriolic speech against India, used the religious card, spoke about Hindus versus Muslims, and made what I would describe as a toxic reference to Kashmir. And that could well be the dog whistle that may have encouraged this particular group to carry out such a murderous attack on civilians.
OK, thank you very much for your expertise. C. Uday Bhaskar, we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.